Might actually be a bit too warm for this cardigan. We'll see. We'll try. Welcome to the 5K Q&A celebration. First off, we have made it to 5K on this channel. Actually, we're at 6.5 and I only brought up this Q&A like a couple of weeks ago. So we've gone from 5K to 6.5 in like 2 weeks, which is absolutely incredible. Are we straight across? I don't think we are. That looks straight across, kind of. I, first of all, wanted to thank you all so much. This is just the best community. You all are so kind and wonderful. I am so excited to post videos every week because I'm so excited to see what you guys are gonna say. Like, I didn't even expect to have this awesome of a community, and I'm so incredibly grateful for it. Like, I'm gonna get teary-eyed if I talk about it for too long. I just wanted to tell you guys that you all are wonderful, and thank you to every single one of you who are subscribed. All right. This is a Q&A. I have tried to answer all of the questions that I got, I think, to some degree. I have tried to organize them. So if you asked several questions, I might have broken them up into like different pieces, just to let you know. Today we're just gonna hang out and I'm gonna answer some of your questions. So grab a cup of tea, get yourself a little fall time snack or just a snack, and let's get to answering questions. All right, so the first question is from Brianna, should have asked for pronunciations. Your name is very close to mine. Would you ever consider making your baking a separate channel / their own videos entirely? If you made them a slightly slower tutorial style on their own, I would 100% consume them as well as the sewing videos. Also, P.O. Box, definitely totally not asking to offload accumulated sewing materials from so many estate sales. I will take those from you. First off, I want to do a second channel at some point in the future, and a baking channel is such a good idea. I hadn't even thought of that, which is weird because I enjoy doing the baking parts so much. I really didn't expect you guys to love it as much as I did. I'm so excited. It's like we all just get each other, and I love it. However, that will be a little bit in the future. Once I feel like I can get my feet under me for like scheduling for a second channel. For now, I actually already have scheduled a couple of purely baking videos. I have one, I really like my Pinterest styling videos. I think they're really fun. So I was going to try Pinterest baking tips and tricks and ideas for Halloween and then do another one for Christmas. And that will be completely baking. I've already started on my Halloween one and it is so fun. So yes, I do have a couple of baking videos, just like purely baking videos on the roster. Is that the way to say that? Until I'm able to make that second channel, I possibly might just like sprinkle more baking videos into my content. We'll see. And yes, a P.O. box is coming. I have several things that I have in my mind that I probably want to start in the new year. P.O. box is one of them. Memberships on YouTube with like extra content and early content is another thing I want to start in January. If you do want to sign up for memberships, maybe tell me like what stuff you want to see for like extra content so that I know what you guys want. P.O. box, my hope is in January or by January, either in January or by January. Not promising either of those. Life gets busy, but that is my goal. Question 2, how long have you been sewing for and what made you decide to try it? So I started sewing when I was 15, which means I've been sewing for 15 years, which is crazy. It was something I always wanted to learn. I've always been like a crafty person. I've loved crafts. And I also at the time was deciding whether or not I wanted to go to college for fashion design or costume design. And I knew that for both of those, you would have to learn how to sew. My grandma has always known how to sew. However, she doesn't live anywhere near me. So there was this woman, her name was Miss Sherry, who had this tiny little fabric and like sewing workshop store. And she taught me how to sew. And then I worked for her for a little bit at one time. Those are like such good memories that you're bringing back. Thank you for asking that question. Question number 3. I went back to school this semester and I'm studying fashion design with a costuming emphasis. Very cool. Oh my gosh. I would love to hear more about your schooling experience and any time you may have worked after college. Also, what is your favorite time period for clothing? I went to Virginia Commonwealth University. They have a theater department. So I graduated with a degree in theater with a concentration in costume design, which I always feel like is a massive understatement because all of my like degree focused classes were in costume design, something to do with costumes, except for like a 101 class that you had to take in acting, set, light and sound. What's the last one? Theater history, which had a two-part class. But other than that, like all of my theater degree things were costuming. For the first like freshman and sophomore, you had to take sewing classes and then like early drafting and patterning classes. Starting freshman year, so my college had like plays that they would put on anywhere from like 4 to 6 a year. And you had to work in the costume shop on top of your costuming classes that you had to take. It was a minimum of 10 hours, but depending on what show you were working on and what you were doing within each show, it was more like 25 to 40 extra hours a week. So you would start with sewing, and then my sophomore year, was it sophomore or junior? I'm getting a little lost on when. I think it was second semester of sophomore year. I started getting to actually make patterns and draft, and my projects would get bigger and bigger to where I was making like full-on dresses. Basically had someone who sewed for you. Every year you also had to work more specifically on a project, like a play. So you would start as a dresser, and then you'd be like second assistant costume designer, and then you'd be the assistant costume designer, and then finally the designer for a show. I was the costume designer for Spam-A-Lot. But my favorite thing that I ever worked on as far as costume design in college, we worked together one time with the dance department, and the seniors were doing like a choreography showcase, and a few of us were picked to do the designs for each choreographer. That was like the most fun I've ever had as a costume designer. I really, really loved that. Very unique, very fun. Also, starting freshman to sophomore year were figure drawing classes, and then junior and senior year, you had costume design classes and costume rendering classes. So I totally forgot to bring this up. I even had in my notes that this was my favorite class that I took, and then I just skipped right over it when my eyes were reading it. But I had to take 1 year, my sophomore year, of costume history classes, which, as I said, were some of my favorite classes that I took. These pictures I'm showing here were from a few costume history inspired pieces that I made when I graduated from my portfolio. But like, you get the point. I had to do stuff like this in my sophomore year. I just gotten better at rendering, so I redid a version of all of them to some degree. All right, back to past me. It was so much work, very hard work, but I did consider the people that I worked with there as like my second family. Like, we were all really close, which is just so special for a college experience. And I got to work with some of the best. The professors were just experts in their field, and so it was so great to get to learn from them. So our costume shop manager, who was also our patterning and drafting and draping professor, he would work on television shows and movies that came into town, and sometimes I got to sew for him on those projects, and that was such a cool thing that he had us do. Like, I feel so incredibly privileged and thankful that he let me work on those things with him, because looking back, it's like some of my favorite things that I get to say I worked on. Like, one of them was Turn. He had me sew a few things with him on that one. It's so fun. And then I had one internship that I really loved in college, which was very different and unique. I had to get okayed because it was such like a unique internship, and it was being the assistant. What is it called? I think I found the name. I was the assistant to the display coordinator in Anthropology, one of those like fashion like clothing stores, which is basically, I worked during the fall semester, so I was basically just doing Christmas decorations on steroids. To this day, really unique jobs were the things that I ended up looking back on and really loving. My first job in costuming at all outside of college was, I worked on a TV show as a costume PA for a TV show called Homeland. I didn't love that show, but that doesn't matter. You know, you can work on things that you're not passionate about. It was such an interesting and like growing experience for me. But by this time, the really long hours that I've been working for like years at this point had started to get to me, and my mental health was pretty bad. So I did kind of have to do a switch and focus on my mental health. As far as my favorite time period, I have such a hard time picking favorites for anything, but especially time periods. I find something interesting and something to love about every time period. However, I have a special love for the Baroque period, and I think it's because it's pretty far removed from what we consider aesthetically pleasing and beautiful today. And it's just another point that proves that beauty standards are not real. It's changed all through time. What's considered beautiful now was not considered beautiful 400 to 500 years ago. And it's just another thing to show you that like you decide what's cool and beautiful about you. You don't let other people decide that for you because it's all silly. It doesn't matter. And the silhouettes were big and bold, and so were the accessories. Everything was just big. Nothing was dainty or small. It was all like maximalism. So Susanna asked, would you ever work in costuming again other than for yourself? And Kayla asked, would you return to styling as a living? Both of you guys had several questions, but I've been organizing them all. So your other questions will probably get asked like later in this video. But the two of you were asking similar questions, so I put them together. Both of these have similar but kind of different answers. With costume design, I never want to close that door because there were things about that job that I really loved, or at least that field that I really loved. So I would say yes, but it would have to be like a unique and different experience. I would love to work in dance like what I did in college. That was really cool and a little bit different. Or like maybe an indie film. The hours on that would be ridiculous, but it would be worth it because I think it would just be a unique experience, especially if I was working with other people that like loved the project too. And as far as styling, I would definitely do that again. But if I were to go into it again, I worked for a company the first time, and I think I would much rather work for clients. It's just more of how I think of styling works better to like work for a client than a company. So the next couple of questions, in fact, are kind of like 4 questions that I thought were similar. So I kind of grouped them together. We're going to answer them one by one. So the 4 questions for this first one are, I think you live with your parents, right? Is the house divided up, or do you share things like a kitchen? Can't help but wonder when your baking interludes come up. 2 is, how would you describe your decorating style? We've seen bits and pieces of your space, but I'd love to see more of it and know more about your inspirations and plans if you have any. 3, seeing the interiors of y'all's home in videos. I'm curious if your family is also creative. And 4, do you have another job separate to YouTube? Number 1. Yes, as some of you may have been able to tell, I do live in a multi-generational home. I live with my parents. And let me explain it a little bit because this was not the plan originally. A few years ago, my mom had a really long and tough injury at the same time that my dad was starting a new business. And I was in between jobs at that point. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I became the part-time caretaker for my mom, as well as working on and off for my dad in his business. Over time, my mom and I started discussing how this house is actually perfectly set up that 2 families can actually live here. We have started planning for kind of breaking up this house for the future. I'm currently saving up to renovate the basement. It's really pretty right now, but I really want to make it into its own living space with like its own entrance, but that's going to take a little bit of money. So I have to save up for that. And renting and housing is so expensive right now that I literally couldn't move out and live the honestly kind of bougie lifestyle that I'm accustomed to living, if you can't tell. And also, I've been spoiled. Like, there's no better roommate than my mom. She's great. So for the basement, what will happen is I'll renovate it and I'll live there. And then when my parents get older and maybe movement gets a little bit harder, we'll switch so that things are more accessible to them. I just feel like there's more hands to pitch in to like making the home work. Like cooking is one big example. We get so many more like healthy home cooked meals because there's more people to cook, and we all trade off. Like, we have a schedule for who cooks on what days. You know, we live in like this late stage capitalist country society where it's just getting to the point where it's not really possible like take care of everything you need to take care of with how much you're getting paid. So living on your own is really getting more and more difficult as time moves on, and it is not possible for everyone. If your family is toxic, or if your house just doesn't happen to be weirdly shaped like ours is, I get it. We are very privileged that this works out the way that it does. But if you can, I hope it becomes an option for more people. It's really great for me emotionally. Honestly feels like you have a little bit more of a community. I'm just really tired of people like judging how other people live. I'm going to live the way that makes me happy. And as long as you're not hurting anybody, who cares? This works for me. And it works for my family too. The fact that I was here to be able to help out during like, you know, a hard time of our lives, like, I wouldn't have changed that for the world. My mom and I got so much closer through that time. So as for this house, my mom has been decorating it since I was a teenager, but now that I've been an adult for a while, her and I have actually started to like decorate together. My mom has always had an eclectic style, but I would say it's a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more world traveler, whereas I'm more along the lines of the woman who lives just outside of town who may or may not be a witch, or as I like to call it, Howl's Moving Castle core. But as time has gone on, our styles have actually started to mesh a little bit more. So right now, both of us are really inspired by English and French cottages, or really just cottages in general, that very warm, cozy feeling we really want to imbue more into the house. As far as plans, recently the dining / game room, one of the walls had water seep through. That took forever to fix. There were a ton of people around the house because the siding needed to be fixed too, but it's all fixed now. But the wallpaper actually shrunk over time. That was our first wallpaper that we ever set up together. In fact, if you see, you might know by this point that I'm a lover of removable wallpaper. It started with my mom. Some of the wallpaper that you see is ones that my mom picked out really early on where she had someone come in and put it up. But like 90% of the wallpaper now is wallpaper that my mom and I put up ourselves, and we really love to do it. And that was our first one. So we're in the process of looking for like more of a dark botanical look, and that will be done in October or November. We also actually want to take the cabinetry in this room that you guys get to see a lot, and we'd love to paint it some kind of coral or millennial pink color to kind of be offset by this like more purpley gray. We also want to repaint the kitchen, have some of the cabinetry have like a dark foresty green color, and maybe recover that island. There's a couple of other projects that we want to do, but really we just enjoy like slowly working on this house. It's kind of a lifetime project, and slowly change the house over time is really fun to do and fun to see. As far as my parents being creative people, my dad is not artsy at all, but he's adopted. So that's why my mom and I do most of the decorating. He doesn't have the eye for it. He's not interested in it, but he is the in-house handyman and carpenter sometimes. We like to do as much as we can ourselves to the house, and then only call in help when we absolutely need to. So that's his job. And as you might have been able to tell, yes, my mother is so incredibly creative. I got my creativity from her. As of right now, she is a jewelry designer. She actually went to college and got a degree in fine arts, I believe. So yeah, very creative. And growing up, I would come home from school and like literally help my mom paint furniture, go to Home Depot every weekend. I would actually love for us one day to either have like an interior decorating or furniture flipping. I have a lot of dreams. I'm like a little 5-year-old, but that's one of them. I would love to do that one day. By the way, since I brought up Howl's Moving Castle, I just have to recommend a book. I did this once before, but when I read a really good book, I have to recommend it. I recently read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. It is like a fantasy book with a hint of romance in it. And the two main characters give such Sophie and Howl vibes, both book and movie, in my personal opinion. I really love it. If you're like me and Howl's Moving Castle is one of your favorite movies, I would highly recommend reading that book. Nobody asked me. I had to tell you. All right, next question. Another set of questions. 1, would you be comfortable sharing your measurements or the size of pattern you use and your height to help those who sew who are similarly shaped? My bust / waist / hip measurements often put me into 2 to 3 different sizes, which gets thrown off more by my short torso. Same. So I'm curious if you encounter the same issues and how you remedy it. Thanks. Question: how did you develop your style to fit your body shape or learn how to make clothes that were best for your body shape? 3, 2-part question here. Favorite source of aesthetic inspiration specifically for curvy bodies, and top 3 to 5 keywords to describe your personal style or brand. And lastly, do you have any advice for how to find your style? I'm a plus size new mom who sews, but I'm having a hard time finding styles that feel like me. Okay, so first question. I am 5'6", and in like store sizing, I am a 10 to 12 on top and a 14 to 16 on bottom. If I buy a 16, I am usually going to have to tailor it. Honestly, if I buy a 14 as well. I usually buy 16 more often, but I have to tailor it a lot. Sewing patterns, I'm usually anywhere from a 16 to a 20, depending on which company I'm buying it from. And I also tend to have to do a lot of taking things in taking things out. So what I do personally when I have a new pattern that I haven't used before, and honestly patterns that I have used before because I don't ever write down my notes of what I changed. I'm very bad at that. I add ease to every piece and then put it together and try it on myself and then like tailor it to fit me from that point. It's probably because I loved draping. Like draping was my favorite thing in college. So getting to actually put it on my body and like see where to make it fit me better tends to be the best way for me to do it. As far as developing my style, that's been like a lifelong job. Not really a job. I really enjoy doing it. I love clothes. When I was first starting to like buy my own closet and my own clothes, I've always been inspired by history ever since I've had the ability to buy my own clothes. I would say I started off probably being most inspired by the 60s and 70s. And then at another point, I was super inspired by like Regency era clothing. Another time it was 1940s. But now that it's been a while of me buying my own clothes, I would say that I don't have one time period that I'm inspired by. It's more of most of my pieces just have some kind of historical inspiration to them. And two, one of the major things for me in finding my own personal style was having to redefine flattering. I actually stopped using that word for a really long time because I knew I needed to dissect what I found flattering from what like society or people told me was flattering on me. There's so much styling advice that is seeped in fat phobia. So I thought it was very important to discover for myself what I found flattering on me, regardless of what other people thought. And I think that's just an important thing overall. I don't dress for other people. If I did, I'd be very sad. Like I've only started using flattering again in my vocabulary because now I know that when I say flattering, I'm the only person that got to decide whether or not I find it flattering. Okay, so as far as 3 to 5 words, that is hard because I am really bad at keeping to like a certain amount of words, but I'll do 2 versions. Like one just for like how I want my clothing to feel. I would say comfortable, expressive, cozy, gentle, and fun. And as far as aesthetics, it's Miss Frizzle, grandma, fantasy creature. My favorite source of aesthetic inspiration for curvier bodies right now is definitely Pinterest, which is a little sad. Pinterest is doing much better than it used to, but better doesn't mean great. And I've also been able to find a couple on YouTube. I don't know if YouTube is hiding them from me, but I am constantly on the lookout for people with bigger bodies who have a little bit more of like historical, cottagecore, whimsy goth, like whatever. I have found a few on both sites, so I will put them down below in the description so that you guys can check them out too. I would say that most of them don't have style close to me, but I do find them very inspirational. So I do have a full video coming up some point in the near future about how to find your style, but I do not want to leave you hanging. So I'm going to give you like a few little pieces of information. Also, congrats on being a new mom. I hope you're getting some sleep. I'm sure you're not, but I'm going to put that thought out into the world for you. Number 1, you're going to run diagnostics on your closet. So you're going to pick an amount of time. It could be 2 weeks. It could be a month. It could be months. And you are going to take note. You can write it down. You can keep it in your brain of what you run to, what you stay away from, what you like to wear on a daily basis. And ask yourself, why do you like to wear it? Is it because it's comfortable? Is it because it makes you feel confident? Is it one specific thing in that garment that draws you to it? 2, you're gonna start getting inspiration, just as much inspiration as you can. That means Pinterest boards. You're gonna take I do this all the time. I take photos of like movies and TV shows and I put it into an album. Actually, I haven't done that yet. I'm pretty bad about putting it into an album. I'm going to put them into an album of just inspiration that I found. I take screenshots on my computer literally all the time. As of right now, you're not gonna think about why you like them or what draws you towards them. You're just gonna get as many photos as you can that for some reason you like. Now, once you have anywhere from like 50 to 100 photos, that's when you start going through them and you start finding similarities. Like, what is it about these pieces and these pictures that you like, and you can start to get an idea of why you like these things. And the things you're going to look for are not things that you think other people would find pretty or good or flattering on you. That's not the point. I want you to say, oh, I would enjoy wearing that thing. I would feel confident. I would feel comfortable. 3, I would make a list of things that are important to you when you are wearing clothes. Is it comfort? Is it confidence? Is it functionality? And it doesn't have to be one. There can be so many things. Like I love functional clothing. I wear like corsets and petticoats, but I do really like functional clothing as well. So like the two they don't have to be like mutually exclusive things, right? You can mix two very seemingly different things together. What's your main goal when it comes to your closet, or main goals when it comes to your closet? I will say, since you're a new mom, you're probably running around after a little one, and you will be for a while. So I will just give you like one personal favorite of mine, which is a fabric. I would recommend comfy fabrics that include elastic. My personal favorite is anything that has wood or wood pulp in it. So that's rayon, lyocell, viscose, and modal. Modal? I think it's modal. Someone will tell me that I pronounced it wrong. They usually are very pretty fabrics, but they're also very breathable. They're very light. They move with you. I love anything made of wood pulp and wood. It's a perfect mixture of like a synthetic fabric and a natural fabric in one. And it is. It's literally synthetically processed, but it's a natural fiber, so it's very cool. The biggest thing I would probably take away from this is when you're trying to figure out your style, you have to find out why you like certain things. That's what keeps you away from like giving into micro trends and really cementing your own personal style. Next question. How did you and your family make the bird sanctuary, and what made you decide to do that? Okay, so this is another full-length video that I had a plan for. But again, I'll just give you a quick overview. It was in the middle of my mom's injury, and we were trying to find things that would bring her and us, honestly, a lot of joy. That's when we dyed our hair. We were making really fun and interesting meals. That's when I really got into cooking. And my mom was watching the news, and King Charles's, his garden in Highgrove? Is that what it is? I wrote it down. His garden in Highgrove, he was showing it. And my mom loved that so much that she bought his book on his garden. And in there, he talked a lot about a bird sanctuary that he had. And she was like, we have something semi-similar, 1,000th of the size, but we could literally look out our kitchen window and look at a bird sanctuary. So she went and bought a couple of those fake bird cages. Those are not real. We do not keep the birds. We just use them to feed the birds. Went and got some seed from Home Depot. And since then we've done so much more research, and we've gotten a bunch of different ways to feed the birds. And we also use a wide variety of food, and we just tend to get a ton of different birds. We do live along the East Coast in an area that just tends to have a really wide variety of birds, period. So I think we're lucky on top of that. So next up is lightning round, which were shorter questions, answers that hopefully are going to be shorter. How old is your doggy? He is 13 years old. He still acts really young, and honestly, he's a Westie. Westies tend to have a pretty long life. I've met several that are well over 20 years old, but now that he's getting a little older, we are wanting to get a second dog, and I tried to convince my mom to get any dog that was not a Westie. She's only an Ollie fan. She's only really a Westie fan. She's not really a dog fan in general. She likes dogs more now, but that was only because Ollie convinced her to like dogs. So sometime in probably the new year, you guys will be seeing a smaller version of Ollie running around. Westies are one of the most stubborn breeds of dog. So I don't know how I'm gonna be doing, but it'll be fun, and they are very cute. And Ollie is literally the sweetest dog in the world. I couldn't have asked for a better first dog. I'm here for the sewing, but I love all the bonus food content in each video. Oh, thank you. I do too. When you're wearing headphones, what are you listening to? And second, seeing your Elton John shirt in the latest video, I'd love to know your fave musical artist or genres. Thank you so much. I listen to a wide variety of things when I have my headphones in. I get very bored very easily, so I gotta keep my brain on a revolving door of things to listen to. I've recently been getting really into audiobooks. That's kind of gotten me back into reading. And so here are some audiobooks that I've read recently. I also will watch people gaming and playing video games when I sew. I feel like I don't have to be super involved, so I can listen while I'm sewing, but it's just nice to have something playing in the background. I don't really play video games because I'd rather spend money on clothes. Some of my favorite gaming channels are Secret Sleepover Society, Julian Solomita, and Gab Smolders. They are just like top cozy chill vibes in my opinion. I'm also listening to music. As far as favorites, I don't have favorites usually as far as genres go. I like to listen to basically everything. I was raised on a lot of the classics. My dad loved Queen, Elton John, like you saw, ABBA, and my mom loves like classic 50s and 60s music. So I listened to mostly like that when I was growing up. So I listened to a lot of Ella Fitzgerald, Dean Martin, Bing Crosby, Sammy Davis Jr., Josephine Baker was a big one growing up. And I've really been getting into that era of music again. I've been listening to Ella Fitzgerald and Etta James like on repeat recently. A big modern artist that I've been listening to recently is Chappell Roan. Been listening to her on repeat for the last couple of months. Sabrina Carpenter. Mainstays that are usually on any playlist that I have is Hosier. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Lil Nas X, Dolly Parton, Florence and the Machine. Those four, any playlist. Again, no specific genres. I just have like favorite artists that I listen to. Next question. What item of clothing you've made do you like the most? Is what you wear the most different? Like I said, I can't pick favorites. So I'm going to give you a few. My first 18th century inspired pair of stays is one of my favorite things I've ever made, which is crazy because it's my first corset that I ever made, and it's still my favorite. I've made so many since then. That one's my favorite. My Phoebe Buffet dress is another one that I'm really proud of. I need to wear that more this year. I did not wear it enough last year. Well, technically earlier this year because it was the first video of this year. My Rapunzel outfit is another favorite, both the dress and the corset. Love them. Super recently, I made, in my 2-part fall video, I made an apron and a slip dress, both of which I really love. The apron and the 18th century stays are the ones that I would wear / wear the most. The Phoebe dress, Rapunzel dress, and slip dress, I love. They're just a little less wearable for every day just because they're a little fancy. And the Rapunzel corset is like not super wearable, but I do love it because every time I wear it, I feel like a woodland creature, and I feel like you just need to feel like one of those sometime. I'm running out of battery. I'm going to change my battery. Next question. If 12-year-old you saw what you were up to, what would she think? I think my word is confused. YouTube was just starting to be a thing when I was around 12, so I don't think she would really know what it was. And second of all, she was the girl with the plan. 12 to 21. I was the girl with the plan. I knew what I was doing, and I didn't follow any of those things as an actual adult, so I think she would just be confused. I'm curious, how much faster is it to sew up something off camera versus make a video about it? Does making a video help keep you motivated? That is such a good question because it is not something I even considered before starting my channel. So I would say yes, it definitely does take much longer to film a project. And you will notice sometimes when it gets later in the day when I'm sewing, I don't film as much. And that is because I literally know that I can get it done in almost twice the time if I'm not filming it. There's something about like wanting to show what I'm doing really clearly and changing up camera angles that just make it so much longer of a process. I don't know why. But the more than fair trade-off is motivation. The reason I started posting videos was because I wanted to get back into sewing my own clothes. I had kind of taken a break since college, just more like tailoring my clothes for a while and doing thrift flips, but not like making myself my own clothes. And I quickly realized that it was motivating me to stay really consistent. So like literally me filming these videos is what keeps me sewing my own clothes, which is very cool. It's like a nice opposite of a vicious cycle. Baking, sewing, and crocheting, I see. Do you have any other hobbies that you enjoy or anything else you would like to try? I'm a major introvert, so hobbies are most of my life. I love to read. As I said a little bit earlier, audiobooks have literally gotten me out of like a 2-year long reading slump. During the pandemic, I was reading like 70-ish books a year, and that pushed me into a reading slump that stuck around until like the beginning of this year. Drawing is probably my longest hobby that I've had. I do draw my designs on here, but other than that, I haven't just been doing them as a hobby recently, but I've been super inspired to do some like fall decor using some of my own drawings. So I'm getting back into doing it recently. I also love embroidery. I don't think I've done it much or at all on this channel, but when I am in the mood for it, it's the least of my hobbies. Like, it's the least that I do of all my hobbies, but when I do it, I always find it incredibly calming. Things that I do want to try, I have a lot. I want to do that punch needle thing where you can like make rugs. I would love to make my own rug. It looks expensive. I was looking it up recently to see how much it would cost to get started. It's expensive, so we'll see when that can happen. I want to try lace making. That looks really cool. And a big one that I've been wanting to do, like literally ever since childhood, is make my own paper dolls. That was one of my biggest hobbies when I was a kid, and I would love to draw and make my own. That might be a video, honestly, coming up. Hi there. Hi. When making things, do you have the perfectionist bug? How do you get over it to make the beautiful and or functional garments or items? Thank you. I am not a perfectionist. In fact, I would say I'm pretty much the opposite of a perfectionist. I am a procrastinator, but I'm not a perfectionist. I was raised and taught by two different perfectionists. My mom is one of the most creative people I know, but she is one of also the most massive perfectionists that I've ever met. And my shop manager slash professor, the guy who taught me how to pattern and sew to the ability that I now have, he was a perfectionist, but he could make more clothing than I've ever seen anyone, but everything came out so perfect. I would bring things to him in the middle of projects because we had to show him as we were going along to make sure that everything was being done correctly. And it was just slightly less than perfect, but I would try to see if he would let it go. Not once. He would send me back and have me do it again. That's why I've been trained by perfectionists. I constantly have them on my shoulders when I'm making any project. I would say though that if you are a perfectionist, the best way that I've seen people get out of the perfectionist bug is by, and this is what I do when I'm down on myself about my own projects, I find it to be a positive that the thing that I made was homemade. I'm proud of myself. I thrift most of my stuff, so I'm like saving the earth a little bit, and I made my own clothing. So if it looks homemade, it should. It was homemade. That's a positive. That's the charm of it. And it's part of the beauty of it. So I tend to just try to twist it into a positive. Next question. I see you use a lot of Moods patterns. Have you ever had any problems with sizing? I tried to make a pair of pants. The size table reflected almost perfectly my measurements, but the end result was huge. Okay, yes and no. I usually don't have a problem with Mood. However, as I mentioned earlier, I do add ease to everything. So if it wasn't my size, I might not have noticed. However, recently I did make an Allison inspired dress from a free Mood pattern, and I did that ease, and I based off of my own measurements what I thought would fit, and it was like 6 or 7 inches too big. It ended up being okay. But I will say that as a caveat to Mood is I love Mood. I think it makes sewing so much more accessible for people. But I will say that's a caveat. The fit might be a bit weird, but I think it's worth it. I love free patterns. I look at Mood first now for patterns for at least a jumping off point whenever I start a new project. This was not a question, but it was a lovely comment, so I just wanted to show it. Not a question, but I've been loving your content. It's hard to find mid-size / plus size sewing / crafting girlies who have similar aesthetics to myself. Congrats on hitting this milestone. Looking forward to what you'll do next. Thank you so much. You all have left the kindest comments. Even in asking questions, you guys were just so kind and like complimentary. Thank you. But yeah, that is one of the main reasons I started this channel was I didn't see a lot of people like me, specifically like you said, with an aesthetic like mine. So I'm glad you guys have found me. It's kind of crazy with how much stuff is on YouTube and the internet. I'm gonna leave this as an open-ended thing. If you all have any more YouTubers that you found that have similar aesthetics and do similar content to me, I would love for you to leave them down below because I would love to check them out and subscribe to them, and then other people can do that too. Yay! Because I think we're all looking for more of them. That was all the questions. I hope I answered them well. Thank you guys for asking these questions. I didn't even know if I would get like one question, so thank you. I'm pretty sure that next week is going to be an off week for me, so there's probably not going to be a video next week. We're kind of putting together a last second vacation, but it might fall through. If you do see a video next week, then that will be pushed off. There is 1 week that I'm going to be taking off sometime between now and October, like mid-October. But I'll see you very, very soon for a fall decorating sewing DIY video. I'm so excited. I've started working on it. It's so fun. Thank you guys again so much. I appreciate every single one of you for subscribing and having a good time. I feel like we all have such a fun time here. And I hope to see you back here next time. Bye. Can I just not talk? I'm like so struggling. How did you and your family make the Berg? I just don't think I talk very much on a daily basis. And changing up video camera and changing up camera angles. I see you use, why can't I speak? Am I okay?